And I'll pass it over to you, Deborah.
All right, great. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And thanks to Anna and Stella from Capital Nature for hosting this Zoom. And I work with the Nature Conservancy Maryland DC chapter. Our mission is to protect the lands and waters on which all life depends. And I've been involved in the City Nature Challenge. I guess this will be my fourth. And it's just so fun, so inspiring. And I'm really happy to have a chance to share the excitement with you and a few how-tos on using iNaturalist to make the Washington, DC area look really good in the Global City Nature Challenge. Yay! Yay. All right, I'm trying to advance my slides here. Nothing's happening. That's weird.
Click like the bottom left of your screen and maybe a little, there we go.
Yeah, my arrow key wasn't working for some reason. All right. Okay, so I've lived in the DC area for a long time, most of my life since high school when we moved down here from New England, and I am just constantly amazed at how much amazing nature there is here in the DC area, the Mid-Atlantic area, and iNaturalist gives us a really great way to explore it and to learn about it and understand it better. So thank you for joining me learning about iNaturalist and the City Nature Challenge. So citizen science, what is that all about? Citizen science is a lot of different things to different people. And first of all, it's a great way to discover nature. So citizen science is an observation activity, and regular people like you and me can do it. And we collaborate with professional scientists in doing it. So citizen scientists, who are sometimes also called community scientists, observe the world around them and collect information on the weather, air quality, water quality, plants and animals. And iNaturalist is a very powerful citizen science platform that can help us take our individual observations and share them with the world in a way such that professional scientists and the whole world can benefit from those observations. So anybody, again, just like you and me, can be a citizen scientist. So this gentleman on the left, whose name is Billy Barr, collected weather and snow data in Colorado for 30 years on his own. And now his data is informing professional scientists' work in climate change. Imagine the great value of any kind of sustained observation of the natural world, like the 30 years of work he did. That's really useful stuff. And then on the right, much closer to home, we've got community scientists and scientists from NOAA doing a study of water and aquatic life in the Chesapeake Bay. So citizen science is important for a number of reasons. Citizen science benefits us as individuals because it connects us with the living world. It teaches us about our local environment. It benefits our community because it supports our well-being by getting us outside and supports our local environment. Helps managers of regional areas like parks and cities make more informed decisions about how to manage those areas. And citizen science benefits the world by contributing to scientific knowledge worldwide. And you can be a part of it. So, the way we're going to talk about contributing to citizen science tonight is through the City Nature Challenge, which is going to begin very soon, just in a couple short weeks. City Nature Challenge is almost here, and through it, the DC metropolitan area folks were participating in a global bio blitz, and there are lots of ways to participate, which is what I'm going to tell you about tonight. Oops, sorry. All right. Okay, so at the end of this month, starting on April 30th, which is a Friday, right after midnight, that's when the observation period starts. And the observation period goes through that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and ends just before midnight on Monday. That's the time during which we'll be going out and making both visual and sound observations of species that we find both in wild areas and also just in our own neighborhoods and backyards. And then the identification period is May 4th through 9th. And then on May 10th, results will be announced and we're going to have a celebration. And the City Nature Challenge has a lot of partner organizations, some of whose logos you see here. We've been having monthly organizer calls since January, in which people from these various organizations get together and plan what kind of events they're going to be hosting. Now this year, a lot of the events are small. If they are in person, they're safely social distanced, and we're having many virtual events this year as well because of the pandemic. But we learned last year in 2020 that we can still have an incredible City Nature Challenge even during a global pandemic. So the name City Nature Challenge can be a little bit misleading because the metropolitan area within which our observations will count for the DC area City Nature Challenge is really huge. So the area in which observations will count is outlined by this bright green line on this map. So you see it includes not only Washington, DC, of course, but also the suburban central Maryland counties of Montgomery, Prince George's, all the way up to Frederick County to the Pennsylvania state line, southern Maryland, Charles and Calvert County, and then all of these northern Virginia counties. So it is really a huge metropolitan area. So why should you participate? Well, we all need more time outdoors. Many of us are spending way too much time at our computers. Spring is gorgeous and always inspiring, and I'm always happy to have an excuse to spend more time outside. And you'll discover and learn about lots of wild species that make their home in the DC area. You will discover new things if you slow down and look closely. As I mentioned, you'll support scientific research. You'll learn about a really amazing, cool app that can become your lifelong friend. I use iNaturalist year-round and learn from it all the time. And then again, you're going to help the DC area look really great and show the world that we are so much more than concrete and monuments and lawyers and bureaucrats. So in the City Nature Challenge, we're looking for animals, big ones, small ones. We're looking for plants. We're looking for fungi. We're looking really for anything that is living, any wild species that is living. Where are we going to be looking? We can look in local parks. We can look in our backyards. We can look on our porches. We can document the ants that come into our kitchen. We can document the centipedes in our basements and our garages. We can look in community gardens. We can look all over our neighborhoods in areas both paved and civilized, and also wild areas, of which there are many wonderful wild areas within that geographic region. So any place that wild plants or animals or fungi make their home, that's where we're going to be looking. I mentioned that I love iNaturalist because it makes me slow down and look at things more closely. Through documenting things I find on iNaturalist, I've learned about galls, which are deformations of plants caused by a little insect that makes the leaves look funny or the stems look funny. I've learned about leaf miners, which are little tiny larvae of little flies or moths that spend their entire childhood in between the two surfaces of a leaf. I've made it a point to try and make an iNaturalist observation every single day for the last year. And even in the dead of winter, it makes me get outside and find something new. And during a time when our lives have become rather constrained and maybe monotonous because of the pandemic, it's really been an inspiration to me to have an excuse to go out and try to find something new every single day. So how can we do this? As I mentioned, iNaturalist is a very powerful citizen science platform. It's an app on your smartphone, and it also connects you to a worldwide virtual community of people, some very knowledgeable professional scientists, other folks who are just regular people who are learning, just like you and me. Who uses iNaturalist? Around the world, there's an entire community who use this app to observe and learn about nature and share their observations. So your observations are not just your own private little memory, but they're shared with the world and they contribute to science. So there are more than 3 million people on iNaturalist. And I've met some really amazing people this way, both people in the community that I've met in person, like Anna and Stella, but also I've had some really interesting correspondence with folks who have my same interests on other continents. It's been really exciting and gratifying. So what do you need to use iNaturalist? Well, you'll need either a digital camera or a camera on your cell phone. And then you also need access to the internet. And if you have the free iNaturalist app on your smartphone, it makes observations really, really easy to make. So first thing you need to do is download the app on your smartphone or go onto your desktop if you're planning to use a camera to make your observations. Go into iNaturalist and create an account. And this is what Stella's mock trial account looks like. And then you can get outside and start making observations. Most observations on iNaturalist are made with photographs, but you can also make observations with little audio files. So you go out, you snap a picture of a wild species that you find either in nature or in the city. And then this is what the screen looks like on the iPhone. It shows a little thumbnail of your picture. It gives you the opportunity to suggest what you might be seeing or to take the suggestions that are automatically made by the app. And it all automatically fills in the date of your observation and the location of your observation. And then it gives you the opportunity to mark whether it's captive or cultivated. Now, I said we're taking observations of wild species, but if you do want to take a picture of something, for example, a plant in a garden, because it can help you identify those, that's not off limits, but please make sure you mark it as captive or cultivated. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the projects you can join a little bit later. If you take observations during that period of April 30th through May 3rd, your observations will automatically be included in the City Nature Challenge project, but there are many, many, many other projects you can join as well. So when you are out there using a smartphone, taking a picture, you can either take a picture within the app at that time in the field, or if you're going to be making a lot of observations, what I usually do is just take pictures. And then when I get home in the evening, when it's a little quieter, I can relax, put my feet up, not have the sun glaring in my smartphone screen. That's when I usually upload my observations. And here's what it looks like. iNaturalist is a very intelligent system, and it's been trained multiple times on computer vision. So it makes sometimes shockingly perceptive and accurate suggestions about what the species is that you're submitting pictures of. So in this case, the app was pretty sure that this species was in the genus Viola, and it made several species suggestions. And it also tells you whether the species, in addition to being visually similar, because it makes the suggestions on visual similarity, but it also tells you if the species has been seen nearby. And that can be really helpful because you're just choosing something based on visual similarity, but it's not also seen nearby. You may be picking something that really is from another continent. You can also click on this little eye to find out more about the species. If you click on this little eye on the smartphone, it'll take you to the Wikipedia description of the species. It'll show you a map of the range of the species. This is very helpful information because you can see whether your observation is in the range or out of the range, in which case it's probably not that species. And you can learn a lot more about that species. So it's super, super helpful. Connects you with a lot of information. And then as amazing as the smartphone app is, when you get onto iNaturalist on the desktop, it does even more. And this is how it looks on the desktop. So here, Anna has submitted this picture, and she suggested that it was an eastern painted turtle. And then this other iNaturalist user, Luca Reptile, came by, saw this observation and said, yes, I agree, that's an eastern painted turtle. We can also see over here other places that eastern painted turtle has been observed and submitted to iNaturalist. And because we've got these two people who agreed about the species identification of that and nobody disagreed, this observation has reached research grade, as you can see up here. And research grade qualifies this observation to be uploaded to GBIF, which is the Global Biodiversity Information Facility. That's where the information about species distributions on our planet is kept. And it's when this information, the research grade information, goes up to GBIF, that's when it's downloadable by scientists worldwide and they can use it in their research. I've downloaded information from GBIF about where the Chinese tallow tree was found by iNaturalist and in other systems as well. And I'm using that information for some research I'm doing. So this is how your observations, in addition to being a beautiful walk, Anna, which you obviously had in a beautiful place that day and saw this really cool creature, that observation benefited her that day, but it's also benefiting the world by being uploaded to GBIF. So for some really characteristic species that have a certain look all the time and are easy to recognize, sometimes one picture is enough. But there are many times when several pictures are even better and give you a better chance of getting an accurate species identification. So for example, for a tree, really important if it has leaves on it to get a good shot of the leaves. If it's winter, get a shot of the twigs and show where the buds are along the twig. Take a step back and get a picture of the overall shape of the tree if you can. And take a picture of the bark and take a picture of any flowers or fruits that you might see. And it's possible to upload multiple pictures within the smartphone app all at once. It's very easy to do. So these are some tips for getting good pictures of fungi. So it's very easy, of course, because mushrooms don't move. They don't run away, they don't fly away. It's very easy to get pictures of the top of the cap. But what you should also do to get a better chance of a good species idea is get underneath. And this is Anna's little trick of getting a picture of the underside of the cap so you can see whether it has gills or pores. Super, super important for species ID. And it keeps you from having to stand on your head to see the underside of the mushroom. It's also really important to get a picture of the overall stalk because some mushrooms have a little ring right here. And that distinguishes an edible species from a poisonous species. Other mushroom species have a really smooth stalk, others have a really scaly or flaky looking stalk. So again, these multiple shots give this observer a better chance of getting a good species ID on that mushroom. Another thing you'll want to mark in your observations is whether what you're observing is wild or captive. So you can see the beautiful red box on the left, definitely wild. You can see Anna's really cute dog on the right, who may think she's wild, but she's actually captive. So you can often tell as you're scrolling through observations that other people have made. If it's a picture of a cute dog or cat, that's usually a new iNaturalist user. And you can get away with submitting cute pictures of your cute pets, maybe once or twice, but after that, you gotta stop. And if you do it at all, please be sure to mark it captive and cultivated. So these are some wild plants. Some of these you can see outdoors right now. In fact, these are very current looking pictures. We've got bluebells on the left. Those were at their peak this week and last week. In the middle, we've got redbud and flowering dogwood, which are both native to the area. And on the right, we've got some bang. So these are all wild. And the one on the right kind of looks like it's growing up in a sidewalk crack, but it's still wild. These are cultivated. We've got one of the same species that we saw previously. This is a native dogwood that is planted in somebody's garden. So if you make that observation, please mark it captive cultivated. And here we've got tulips in a rock garden. And then on the right, we've got photos from, looks like the National Arboretum, or no, the Botanic Garden, that's where that must be. So these are all captive and cultivated. Please mark them as such. Otherwise, those locations get mixed in with wild locations, and it makes the data much less valuable to scientists. So plants, even if you're in a garden where every single thing that you're seeing was planted, don't forget that there are still lots of wild things taking advantage of the habitat that that garden has created. You can find lots of great bugs, especially in native plant gardens, and you can find various fungi and diseases and galls on the plants themselves. These are all legitimate observations, and they're really, really fun to learn about. So does the thing you are observing need to be alive today, now, while you're observing it? No, it doesn't. iNaturalist accepts observations of anything really that has been alive in the last 100 years. So not fossils, please, not rocks, but skulls are fair game. And I've learned a lot about skull identification from submitting observations of skulls and bones I find in the woods to iNaturalist. Here we've got a snake skin that's been shed. Here is just a fragment of a butterfly wing. Feathers, there's an entire project on iNaturalist for feathers. And you can actually, from some feathers, you can actually tell exactly what the species is. We've got tracks, we've got burrows, we've got animal poop, scat. So also cocoons, all of those things are fair game for iNaturalist observation. And you can learn a lot from studying the traces of these animals, even though you may not see the animals themselves. I mentioned iNaturalist mostly has photos on it, but you can also make audio observations. In fact, with audio is the only way that you can tell the difference between our local fish crow and the American crow. They look very, very similar. If you submit just a photo of a crow, you probably will not get anybody to agree to its identification to species unless you also submit an audio file. And you can make that audio recording right within the app if you're using the most updated version of the app. The iPhone app has just added that capability. The Android app has been doing it for quite some time. So you've got bird calls, you've got cicadas are going to start making a lot of noise. So those are some fun things to catch with the app. Or when you go out for the frog walk on Kingman Island, you might hear some of these guys singing at night, and that would be a wonderful thing to record and submit on. Now, iNaturalist doesn't have the same audio recognition as it does visual recognition of photos. So, so you're going to have to make a guess or just post your audio file up there. You will get knowledgeable people who come along and can help you identify it if you don't know what it is. But one thing that I tried to do in last year's City Nature Challenge to get my species count up was I was in some areas where I could hear birds, but I couldn't see them. And I was only working with my smartphone, so I couldn't use a zoom lens and get very good pictures of birds, but I was making recordings of their songs, and that got me several species that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise because I wasn't getting pictures of those birds, but their songs were recognizable. What are some of the things that you can look for? I've mentioned some things about birds and squirrels. We've got a lot of cute bunnies in our area, chipmunks, and also don't forget the wonderful array of herpetological diversity in our area. We've got salamanders and frogs and lizards and turtles, all kinds of insects, and the signs that they leave, their cocoons, their webs, their eggs, all of those make great iNaturalist observations. Plants, both things out in the forest like trees and wildflowers, weeds in your sidewalk, weeds in your garden, ferns and mosses. I will give you one tip. If you're using a smartphone and not a camera, you've got time to still invest in an inexpensive little clip-on macro lens. And if you can find a little macro lens that clips onto your smartphone for usually between $25 and $35, it opens up a whole new world for when you're looking at mosses, when you're looking at insects. It opens up a whole new world of detail and really increases your ability to make some interesting observations. And then we've talked about mushrooms and other fungi, shelf fungi, lichens, slime molds, all of those things are all over iNaturalist, and they're really fun to learn about. Okay, so when you've made some observations, by taking photos in the field and either uploading them in the field as you're there or at home in the evening, or you've uploaded your audio files, what should you do after that? So there are a lot of people who during the City Nature Challenge, after dark, or during the identification period, get onto iNaturalist, and we are identifying as many observations as we can. So please go back onto iNaturalist and check your updates, because even if you posted something as just plant or just bird or just turtle because you couldn't figure out which one it was, somebody has probably come along and made some suggestions about what it is. So look at the suggestion that they made, compare the information about what they suggested with your photo and your memory of what you saw. And there's a little check mark, which you can just check the box and you can accept that suggestion, or you can make another suggestion. So please, please check your updates, because we want to get as many as possible of observations made during the City Nature Challenge up to research grade. That's one of the things that shows the incredible vibrance and sophistication of our citizen science community here in the DC area. And our percentage of research grade observations in the last couple of City Nature Challenge events has compared very favorably with other metropolitan areas, and I want to keep it that way. So help us help you get your observations up to research grade by checking your updates and learning from the suggestions people make. So you can also help identify other people's observations, even if, this is the amazing thing, even if you are not confident in your natural history skills. In fact, one person, when they were typing in the chat, said, I don't know very much about natural history, but I enjoy birdsong. So there's going to be a lot of observations in iNaturalist that just say unknown, and you can help people by categorizing it as a bird or categorizing it as a plant. I know that sounds a little bit silly, but there will be people who are going into iNaturalist and they just want to help identify plants. They're going to search on plant, and if an observation is marked plant, then we can find it more easily. If an observation is marked unknown, there's a greater chance that it will languish there for a long time without getting any identification. So for your own observations, even if you don't know what it is, put a general category. Anna?
Yeah, I just wanted, we did have a question that came in that's pertinent to the slide.
Yeah.
The question is, what do you mean by updates? And maybe that's when you pop over to the live site, you could show that, I guess.
Yeah. I expect to have time at the end of these slides to show you the iNaturalist desktop site, and I may even be able to show you how it looks on my phone. So I will show you how to check your updates, because it's really important to me. Thank you so much for asking about that.
Sure.
Okay, so after you've made your observations, you've checked your updates, maybe even helped identify other people's observations, and we will have an ID party during the identification period. You can join us. It'll be an evening Zoom just like tonight, and you'll get more tips and tricks for making identifications on your own and others' observations. Also, tell your friends. Tell your friends about City Nature Challenge. Tell your friends about iNaturalist. There's enough fun to go around, so please help spread the fun. Now that we've talked about some of the things that you can observe, document, and learn about, I'd be really interested in hearing, if you want to type in the chat, some of the places that you plan to go. One of my favorite places to explore is in the Potomac Gorge. I love the Billy Goat Trail. I love Carter Rock. I love the C&O Canal towpath. And that area is actually known worldwide for having a very high concentration of biological diversity. So if you're going to go in your neighborhood park, if you're going to explore the weeds and bugs in your garden, we're really interested in hearing about that in the chat. Oxen Run Park, gorgeous. Huntley Meadows, Pennsylvania State Park. Yeah. In the cracks of the sidewalk. I love sidewalk weeds. They are so tough. They are so resilient. And if you look at them closely, some of them are really, really beautiful. Tiny little flowers. There's so much to discover. All right, thank you. Okay, so here's some of the things that we observed in the 2020 City Nature Challenge. Again, whoops, it was our first pandemic City Nature Challenge. And we were planning many in-person group events, and it evolved very, very quickly as the pandemic got worse into a lot of people observing on their own. But you're safe when you're in nature. And here's what we saw. We saw an awful lot of garlic mustard, which is an invasive species. So that always makes me a little sad when there's an invasive species in the top 10. But my consolation was the beautiful May apple ran a close second. Now we had cardinals and robins galore. Jack in the Pulpit is really distinctive that time of year when it's sending up that fascinating flower. Flowering dogwood was very easy to observe that time of year because it was peaking. Also in the top 10, on the second row was red dead nettle. And I have to say, I think that is peaking right now. And I don't know if that is going to be as conspicuous in this year's City Nature Challenge. I feel like we are maybe a week ahead of where we've been in previous City Nature Challenges. And I think that the things that come to the top 10 this year, some of them are going to be different because a lot of what people capture when they're new iNaturalist observers is stuff at the peak of bloom. And many of these species that you're seeing here are going to be past their peak of bloom. So some of these top 10 species will be the same, but I think some will be different. All right. The one really exciting find, and this happens all the time with iNaturalist. So Luca Reptile is the handle for this young gentleman who is a high school student in Arlington. Made this observation of a species of salamander that hadn't been spotted in Arlington County since 1977. So he found this because he was participating in the City Nature Challenge, and it was a really exciting find. Stuff like that is happening all the time. So I mentioned that projects are something that iNaturalist allows you to set up. Carrie, one of our other lead regional organizers, documented all of the birds and insects and the weeds in her backyard, and she has found 433 species in her DC backyard. So Stella also lives in DC and has this old stone wall in an alley behind her home. And she slows down and looks closely and finds little plants and fungi and lichens, and it's a beautiful little miniature ecosystem. So Vince looks for wild plants and animals in Rock Park, and also things that were naturally occurring just outside his door. So I hope I've inspired you to join a worldwide community of nature lovers and people who are making observations for the City Nature Challenge. It is so fun. You know, our sense of time has gotten kind of warped during this pandemic. We're shut in. Sometimes the days just seem to go on forever. And, you know, in some ways, we're kind of living in a twilight zone because we're deprived of our regular schedules and activities. But the City Nature Challenge, one thing I love about it is every moment counts. During the City Nature Challenge, I'm outside as much as I can possibly be during the daylight hours. When it's dark at night, I go in, I write journal entries for the project, I do as many observations as I can, and I'm always thinking during the City Nature Challenge, what is the best thing I can do to take advantage of the next 10 minutes to make the biggest difference for the DC area? And I really enjoy it. It's I'm not usually an adrenaline junkie, but I become an adrenaline junkie once a year during the City Nature Challenge. Okay, so what's next? Well, you can consult our regional website at citynaturechallengedc.org, where we have a list of local events, some virtual events like this, some of them tailored to specific audiences. We've also got some organizations who are offering small, safely distanced events and offering some slots to the public. So I'll show you that website a little bit later. Definitely sign up for iNaturalist. Once you're on iNaturalist, join the DC Area City Nature Challenge project, and you've got a couple of weeks to practice making observations. Go out there, take some pictures, practice uploading them to iNaturalist and comparing the auto suggestions with what you've seen. Practice making audio recordings and uploading those to iNaturalist, and ask questions, both of us regional organizers here tonight, and also actually on iNaturalist, because every observation has a little comment field. So you can ask questions of people who have made comments on your IDs and learn a lot. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. I learn a lot more from my identification mistakes than I learn from the times I get something right the first time. encourage you to be really brave, because when you are making an ID suggestion, it's just that, it's a suggestion. So iNaturalist does an amazing job of aggregating information and coming up with stats on all the great stuff that's in it. This is what the leaderboard looked like a few years ago. And our numbers, gosh, I think last year, Capital Naturalist, our friend Alonso Albugatas in Arlington, he was up over 500 species last year. And Isabella Farr, I think that she was up over 1,000 observations last year. So this is from a few years ago. The City Nature Challenge has just grown and grown every single year. So this is how we did last year as a region. Not just last year. Yeah, so you can see how the numbers have grown each year. This is what we're expecting this year. And we really hope you'll be a part of it. 2020 and 2020, even during a global pandemic, 244 cities took part. We documented more than 30,000 species, nearly 1 million observations made, and more than 40,000 people participated worldwide. So here's how it looked different. In the pre-COVID days, we got together, big group events, a lot of hands-on group events, both outside in the field and inside. But during the pandemic, it still happened. We often went out, we made these solo observations. We were safely masked in case we did cross somebody on the sidewalk on the way to the wall behind Stella's house, but we still made it happen and we had a really great event. So this is our second Pandemic City Nature Challenge. It's going to be even better because we know how to do this now. All right, here's how we did last year as a region. Yep, we did super, super well. And I was really, really proud of how our area stacked up. I'm proud of the biological diversity that we have, the natural beauty that we have, and I'm proud of our community of really engaged citizen scientists. So this is a little bit more about how the information looks and gets shared worldwide. So when you are on iNaturalist on the desktop, you can go down to the help section that's at the bottom of the page and get links to a lot of useful information, including some information about how iNaturalist information is used in research. And when you've got this many observations, you can aggregate it and get some really powerful data. For example, it has been very easy to see, because we have so many hundreds of thousands of observations, things are flowering earlier because our seasons are changing earlier. So it's helping us to document the effects of climate change. This is really important information that gets fed into policymaking. So I think I've emphasized plenty. The spirit of iNaturalist is to document wild species in their habitat, whether that's a fully natural habitat out in rural areas, or whether it's a mini micro habitat in your lawn or your garden or your sidewalk. But it is okay to use iNaturalist for other living things as long as they're marked properly as captive and cultivated. So what next? For City Nature, yep, so this is a slide I'm ending on. And what I'd like to do now is stop sharing slides and have Anna bring me any questions that people have put into the chat, or it's a chance for you to speak up. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna pull up our regional website and show you some of the resources that are there for you.
So the one question that did come in was regarding what the updates are. So I think when you go to the website, I think you'll be able to point that out to folks.
Okay, great. I will do that then. I'm gonna go back here, escape from the slideshow.
And take pictures, everybody. We'd love to see your pictures so that we can help promote for next year too.
Okay. So I've pulled up iNaturalist. Can you see it? Okay, great. So when I'm on the desktop, I'm just gonna go, okay, I'll go to my observations on the desktop. Okay, so you know you have some updates. If you get a little, if you have some stuff here, it's very exciting to see my updates. Okay, so here's what my updates look like. So this person, Bugs, added a comment to an observation that I made. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna look and see what comment Bugs made on my observation. Oh, look at that. Okay, so Bugs agreed that my observation was a black tupelo. And this person also really had an aesthetic appreciation of how beautiful and shiny and new these leaves were. So that's fun. Okay, and another one of the comments, another one of the things that I might update. Okay, this is where they confirmed my identification. So this person confirmed my identification of six-spotted tiger beetle. So this is what I want you guys to do, okay? I implore you, please, go out there, have a great time, make lots of observations, but don't just leave it there. Please get back onto iNaturalist on the desktop. Look up here. You are going to see some updates, and you're going to learn from these identifications that people make. Whether they agree with you or whether they don't agree with you, you will learn. There's no shame at all in making mistakes. We are absolutely all learning. Okay, so that's how you check your updates on the desktop. Were there any other questions, Anna? Nope, can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. There was a question which I was just looking for to put in the chat. It's what are the hashtags? Those were on a slide, but I'm going to go ahead and put those in the chat in a second.
Great.
I wanted to, just while I'm speaking, I just wanted to say that when you have people comment, one other fun thing is when biodiversity projects might see your observation and decide to add it to their project. So I had a wasp that I observed somewhere in Maryland, and the Maryland Biodiversity Project, a couple people went on there and found it and said, oh, well, let's put this on our project. So it's kind of cool. You'll click on your updates and you'll see that people have been looking at your observations and not making comments, but also maybe including them in their own projects, which I think that was very satisfying for me. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, and let me make a plug for the Maryland Biodiversity Project, because it's just amazing. So if you make your observations in the state of Maryland, especially if they are of something unusual, they can automatically be scooped into the Maryland Biodiversity Project, which is if you're curious, go to that. Go to Maryland Biodiversity. I think it's actually .com, but it's a nonprofit organization. Their goal is to have a very extensive photo database of all the species found in Maryland, and iNaturalist has been recently developed a partnership with those folks, and Maryland Biodiversity scoops in observations from iNaturalist. Are there any other questions?
There are not. I would actually, if you wouldn't mind showing on the website, if you click on the community page and like how you can find people, like you can follow people, it's like a social thing. So like I could find you, Deborah, like
Yes.
I'm so excited about what you do. I could go up into community and just type in Deborah Barber and then be able to follow you. And you can only do this on the desktop interface.
Right. Okay, let me get some of this other stuff out of the way. Okay, so it's been a while since I followed a new person, so you might need to remind me how to do this.
Yeah, so I think just hit people, and then there should be like a little search thing should pop up when you hit people. Huh.
Oh, it's
everything's
everything's a little slow.
It's working. Yeah.
It's waiting. It's waiting. So, I do follow a few people. I follow some people that I've never even met. It's not creepy, don't worry. It's totally legit, totally allowed. I follow one guy in New Zealand because I think the flora there is really, really fascinating. I follow a few other people that I have kind of mentored in iNaturalist, and I want to see their observations in my feed. Okay, it's like a little bit like Facebook, because if you follow somebody in iNaturalist, then you can see their observations in your feed, and you know, rather than just randomly scrolling through a whole world full of observations, I can see what they're seeing and I can help them with their IDs. So suppose
so like Luca, if you want to search for Luca reptile, for example, like during the City Nature Challenge, I noticed that Luca reptile was like what do you call it, adding observations or adding identifications, and I know he's an expert. So whenever I have a herp question, I just actually down in the, in the entry, I just at Luca a reptile and say, Luca, is this really a painted turtle? And he'll get back to me like, so
Yeah.
and you can also see people who are the most, there's usually a little list in the bottom right-hand corner when you're making these observations that show like the top number, the people who have the top number of observations and identifications. And even though you don't know them, you can just at them in the chat and say like, what do you think? Do you think this is really this dragonfly? So
Yeah.
take advantage of that expertise.
Yep. So you pull up somebody's page and you just click that to follow them. And now I'm going to see Luca Reptiles observations in my feed. You can also send private messages to people. Again, it's not creepy. It happens all the time. I've had people send me a message asking for more information about one of my observations. One of them is a researcher, and I had obscured the location of one of my observations. It was a kind of sensitive species. So you've always got a choice when you make an observation. You can have the location be completely public and anybody can see a very specific dot on the map of where it is. You can also obscure that location. So if it's sensitive species or on private land that's not your own, that's when I obscure observations. And it'll show the general area where it's found, but it won't show people exactly where it is. So I had somebody send me a private message about an obscured observation location. And because it was a legit scientific researcher, I was comfortable sharing the information about where that thing actually was. So
we did have someone in the chat mention, oh, if I do an observation at my home, should I mark it? And so I just put in the chat, if they make it private, it can't be an observation for the challenge because we have to know at least the vicinity of where it is to make an identification.
Yes. So again, your three options are open or public, obscured, and private. So I recommend obscured if it's something like your home or your friend's land. Again, if it's private, people can't tell where in the world it is. So it's really hard to get a good ID when people can't even tell what continent it's on.
Any other questions, folks, for Deborah?
So what I'll do, while we've got a few more minutes for questions to come in, is I'll show you our regional City Nature Challenge website. So if you go to citynaturechallengedc.org, if you go to the events page, you will see upcoming virtual past and also upcoming virtual events. You'll also see some in-person events, both in-person training events and in-person observation events. So more events are getting added to this list every day. Check back here frequently if you would like to join an event in addition to or instead of conducting observations just on your own. All right, and then on the resources page, you can see recordings of some of our events last year. For example, and other resources as well. A couple of really nice short tutorials on using iNaturalist. You can easily copy the links to these and share them with your friends. We had a couple of kind of focus themed presentations last year, exploring nature with kids, and a really great seminar on how to take quality photos for iNaturalist, which included, of course, tips that I shared tonight, like take multiple photos, get underneath the cap of the mushroom, get your hand in the photo for scale, but it also went way, way beyond those tips with some beautiful examples of photography that got good IDs for iNaturalist. Okay, there's also a link to a little pocket-sized guide to help you take good photos for iNaturalist. This is something that you can just print out and take with you in the field. Okay, so lots of great resources for you here. And whether you want to just use iNaturalist for a few observations during the City Nature Challenge or whether it becomes a year-round endeavor for you, there are lots of resources to support you. And also, again, if you get onto the desktop website version of iNaturalist, there's a very good help section available at the bottom of the page.
Any other questions for Deborah? She's covered everything, so how could we possibly have any more questions? This has been great. Also, I wanted to remind folks that you can save the chat. If you go down there and click the little ellipsis, 3 dots down there, you can save the chat if you want to see all these links and resources about things that people have been doing. We've recorded this, so we will send a follow-up email with a link to the recording, as well as a couple of the links that were mentioned, that were asked for. Maybe some people were asking about some suggested macro lenses, clip-ons. I know our friend Saranella from Audubon Naturalist Society does have a little list that she sends out to folks, so we can grab that list from her and share with folks. So just checking to see if there's any more questions. Lisa, thank you for mentioning having a small ruler for scale. I use a coin sometimes, so you can kind of get a sense, or even just use your own finger and your finger hand or something put next to it. That's great. I put the social media tags in the chat. So if you're a social media user, we would love to see pictures of people actually doing stuff, like actually making observations. We want to see your pretty pictures, but we also would love to just see you and your family and friends out there doing it. That's the really fun part. It's all about having fun doing this. Also, Regina had asked after Deborah was talking about the Maryland Biodiversity Project, Regina asked if there was a DC one, and she went and found it. So iNaturalist does have a Biodiversity of Washington, DC project, and that link is in the chat as well.
Awesome.
Yes, Laura, go ahead and unmute yourself. She has a question that she just wants to ask. It's a little easier to ask in person.
Yeah, I took a picture of a plant and I uploaded it onto iNaturalist, and I got no responses. Now, my coworker went over with his iNaturalist program on his phone, took a picture of the exact same plant, and he got like 10 suggestions after he uploaded it. So I'm not sure, is it something about my program that's doing that? Or is it, I don't know. I was just confused as to why he got a bunch of suggestions of what it was and I got nothing.
Right, right. So when you say suggestions, Laura, do you mean suggestions from the app or suggestions from people?
Well, I'm new to this, so I don't know exactly what he was showing me, but he took the pictures, he uploaded it, and then underneath the picture, he had, like 6 suggestions of what the plant might be.
Right.
And I think he was getting it from iNaturalist.
Yeah, that sounds like the auto suggestions. So if I'm trying to figure out what must have happened if you weren't getting any auto suggestions. Sometimes it'll say, we're not confident enough to make a recommendation, but here are top 10 suggestions.
It doesn't matter if, like, I'm not sure whether he put it in as a wild plant. I put it in as a captive.
Does that make any difference?
Okay. Yeah, I've done 3 plants and none of mine have come up with any suggestions from auto suggest at all. So I'm wondering if it's something about the way I signed up for iNaturalist, or
well, you know what I'd like to do, Laura, if you don't mind sharing your iNaturalist handle with me, I'd be happy to look your observations up on iNaturalist and see if maybe I can make some suggestions.
All right, it's, hold on a second. Nature Girl Seeker.
Nature Girl Seeker, all run together as one word, right?
Yep.
Okay, no spaces. Okay, I'll take a look. If you don't mind, I'll follow you. I'll try and get you to where you are getting some good feedback on what your species might be. And I hope to inspire you to go out and make some more observations.
Yeah, I was trying to get started because these are the pictures I took are plants that are in a native garden that somebody planted 15 years ago, and I don't know what they are because they didn't record what they planted.
Yes.
So we were going back to try and figure out what they were.
Yes, we gardeners are very forgetful sometimes.
Yeah, and they're cool plants, so it's like I really want to know what they are, but
yeah.
Like I said, I for some reason when I've been using iNaturalist, I'm not getting anything, and everybody around me's been getting all kinds of stuff.
All right, I'll take a look and we will get you past that roadblock. I'm confident that we will.
Okay.
Thanks, Laura. We had a question. I think it was Josefina was asking when you were showing your dashboard, Deborah, she said, "Oh, can I see mine like that?" And so I basically said that, yeah, anybody could log into the desktop, into their account and see this sort of dashboard of their observations. So just because we're seeing all the cool stuff that Deborah, every one of us gets to see the same thing. We get
Yeah.
to see our observations, and you can filter them. Like, let's say somebody says, Anna, like, what's the coolest mushroom or fungi observation you've made? I could click on my observations and then filter for fungi and see all the fungi ones that I've made. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, there's so much you can do on a desktop. It's just amazing. You can spend hours and hours. That's really cool. So I go here. So here's your little profile up here. You can go to all these things. You can look at your observations. You can filter on a species. Say my favorite thing is red-seeded dandelion. I can type it in here and see all the observations I've made of red-seeded dandelion. It gives me this little map to show the various places in the world I've made observations. There's just so much information.
Another cool thing I like to do, guys, if I'm going out to a park that I've never been to, I'll look up an iNaturalist. I'll look up the location to find out what iNaturalist observations have already been made.
Yeah.
So if I know, like, I'm a birder, right? So if I'll look up and see if, like, oh, are there any species of birds that are there that I've never seen before, I'm gonna look for those. And you
Yeah.
can even see the dates and times. So like if it's an observation made in October, then obviously I'm not gonna see it. So, but you can use that as well.
Yeah. One thing I love to do when I'm gonna travel and be in a new area is I go to explore, and then I can just pan the map to where I'm gonna be and start zooming in and look at the stuff that people are seeing there. So it gives me kind of an idea of what I'm gonna see on my hikes in exotic locations.
Maria says, I'll be new to iNaturalist and would love to follow anyone to see your observations. So if anyone's comfortable, feel free to put your handles in the chat so people can, so that those of us on the call can follow each other if you're interested.
Yeah. Yep, that's me, Dee Barber.
Can I mention something?
Yeah, sure, Lisa.
So one of the things that we use with our Master Naturalist program, we do walks called Prince William Wild Things safaris, and we encourage people to look at the iNaturalist Prince William County and put in for the dates so that they can see what they might see when we're on our walk.
Very cool.
Yeah. Nice.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Well, we are just at the hour. Thanks everybody for your great questions. Don't forget to save the chat so you can capture some of this cool information. We packed a lot into this hour. I just wanted to let you know that we are going to schedule another training like this next week. It's probably going to be Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. We're just deciding. We're going to decide between now and tomorrow afternoon. You can go to capitalnature.org, which is my nonprofit's website with Stella. We'll have that listed, and it'll also get onto the events page of the local website that we've been showing you all night, citynaturechallengedc.org. And other programs that we're going to be adding that Deborah mentioned, we're going to have a virtual ID party, like she said, and we'll get that set up on Eventbrite for May 5th, and then a celebration Zoom where we celebrate what we found and kind of chat and show pictures and show and tell, and that will be on the 10th, which is a Monday, which is the day that the global folks mentioned the sort of global results. So we'll be celebrating then. So just be watching our website for those events. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.
Happy spring, everybody.